They filmed her crying, then posted it for likes. 41 years in one classroom erased with a tap. No one asked how it felt to leave everything behind. But when a knock came at her door, Daniels realized some lessons never end. Part 1. When Grief Goes Viral. Detroit, Michigan, fall 2023. They filmed me crying on my last day, then turned it into internet applause. That was the first thing I said to my daughter after she showed me the video. I was in my kitchen, holding a chipped mug from the 1982 teacher conference in Toledo, when she turned her phone around and said, "Look, you are going viral." Viral. Like it was something worth celebrating. There I was on screen, hunched, cardigan dusted in chalk, waving goodbye to an empty classroom with swollen eyes. I did not even know someone had been recording. Probably one of the younger teachers with a smartphone tucked into their sleeve. They always said they were capturing moments. But I did not ask to be a moment. Not one that strangers would scroll past with a thumbs up and a crying emoji. The comments were kind. I will give them that. Thank you for your service. Daniels. You taught my cousin in '96. She still talks about you. This made me cry. Teachers are heroes. Heroes do not sit in quiet kitchens staring at unpaid gas bills. Heroes do not lie awake wondering if they were just tolerated, not remembered. Heroes do not feel like ghosts inside their own stories. I started teaching in 1973. My husband, Frank, had just died in a press machine accident at the GM plant in Hamtramck. I was 26, with a 6-month-old daughter and a teaching license from Wayne State. They assigned me to room 12 at McKinley Elementary, red brick, 3 stories tall, with squeaky floors and radiators that clanged like church bells in winter. I made $8,200 a year and felt like I would won the lottery. Back then, being a teacher meant something. When you said you worked in a school, people stood up straighter. They thanked you, shook your hand, brought you pies in November. Chalk was power. You could stop a room cold with one slap of it on the blackboard. No need for behavior charts or tablets with cartoon mascots. Just you, 25 sets of eyes, and a sense of shared purpose. Now they bring you a ring light and ask if you are comfortable on Zoom. They send emails that say things like, "We are concerned you used a gendered greeting in class today." I tried to keep up. Lord knows I tried. But somewhere around 2012, when cursive was declared non-essential, I felt something crack in me. I would spend decades helping children trace their names with shaky pride. And suddenly, that pride was outdated. Gone were the Christmas plays, now it is Winterfest. Gone was the flag, replaced by some district-approved banner about global citizenship. And every time I said, "Merry Christmas," someone filed a report. So I stopped saying it and started counting the days. Still, I stayed. I stayed for the kids who came to school hungry and left with a full heart. For the quiet ones, the broken ones, the ones who looked at me like I was the only stable thing in their lives. Like Marcus. I had not thought of Marcus Johnson in years. 3rd grade. 1980. His shoes were always too small. He drew trucks in the margins of every worksheet. He once bit the principal on the hand. But when he cried, and he did, once, behind the coat hooks, it was the kind of cry that had years behind it, he said to me, "Miss Daniels, I ain't gonna be nothin', right?" And I remember kneeling down, brushing dust off his jacket, and saying, "Marcus, you are going to be a man people can count on." He did not believe me then, but I meant it. I sat with that memory a while after the video went viral. The comments rolled in for days. Former students. Yes, but mostly strangers. And that is what stung. The applause was loudest from people who never knew me. Never knew how I stayed late with Angela Mendez when she was learning English. Never knew how I visited Anthony Barrow in juvenile detention, just to tell him he was not invisible. So when the knock came at the door on Sunday evening, I thought it was just the mailman. But it was not. It was a man in his 40s, tall, broad, tired in the eyes. He wore a blue jacket with a busted zipper, and work boots caked in oil. There was a girl in the car behind him, maybe 10, holding a tablet, her face lit up by some game. He looked at me a long moment. Then he said, "You do not remember me, do you?" I shook my head slowly. "Should I?" He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Name's Marcus? Marcus Johnson. You taught me in 80. I used to draw trucks and get sent to the office every week. I covered my mouth with my hand. "I saw the video," he said. "My girl showed it to me." She said, Daddy, that teacher looks like she really loved her job." And I told her, she is the only reason I got one. I stepped aside and motioned him in, but he shook his head. "I can stay. I was driving by. I work out in Dearborn now, but I kept that letter you gave me, the one where you said I mattered." He pulled a folded slip of paper from his jacket. Faded, soft at the creases. I carry it in my wallet. Still, my eyes burned. He turned to go, but paused. "I lost my boy last year. Gang stuff. I could not stop it, but I am raising his little sister now, and I am teaching her to read, with trucks and bedtime stories." He nodded. "I just thought you should know. You did something. You really did." And then he left. I stood in the doorway long after the taillights disappeared. The fall air smelled like dry leaves and memory. For a long time, I had let myself believe that the video was the last word, that the applause, the comments, the algorithm, that was all I would leave behind. But it was not. There was Marcus, and there was that letter, and there was a little girl in the back seat who might just grow up believing she is worth something. I walked back inside, put the kettle on, and opened the shoebox under my bed, the one full of old cards and crayon notes, the one I had not touched in years. At the very bottom, beneath a faded Valentine from 1984, was an envelope I did not recognize. In shaky pencil, "To Misty from Timmy G. Please do not read this till I am gone. Part 2. The Boy Who Vanished. Detroit, Michigan 2023. Id memory, 1987. The envelope was yellowed at the edges, sealed with Scotch tape gone brittle. Timmy G. I had not seen that name in over 3 decades. Timothy Grant. 3rd grade, 1987. Small, quiet, always wore his backpack high on his shoulders like it was armor. He barely spoke, but when he did, it was with the gentleness of a child twice ignored. The note on the envelope read, "Please do not read this till I am gone." I held it like glass. Was he gone now? Had I already waited too long? I was not sure if gone meant from my class or from this world. Back in 87, Timothy came to McKinley Elementary halfway through the year. transferred from another school after some trouble. But no one ever told me what. His file was thinner than it should be been. No parent contact, no emergency number, just lives with foster guardian. Intake pending. I tried to keep an extra eye on him. He did not cause problems, never raised his hand, never raised his voice. He drew birds. Always birds. Sometimes full of color, sometimes in pencil, flying away toward some invisible place. One Friday in March, he simply stopped coming. No withdrawal form, no transfer paperwork. Just gone. I asked the office. They said the agency moved him. No forwarding contact. Back then, kids like Timmy fell through cracks as wide as freeways. I thought about him for weeks. Then months. Then years. And eventually, like all teachers with too many names in their hearts, I filed him under never got the chance. In 2023, I was holding that chance in my hand. I peeled the tape carefully and opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of lined notebook paper. Faded pencil. Small handwriting. No mistakes, just careful. Deliberate words. Dear Miss, if you are reading this, I guess I am not in your class anymore. I just wanted to say thank you. You did not yell at me when I cried about the math test. You let me keep my bird drawings. You told me my stories were not dumb. That was the first time I ever felt like maybe I was not dumb either. They say I am going to a new placement. I do not like moving. I had just started feeling safe. If I do not get to say goodbye, this is it. Thank you for seeing me. Love. Timmy G. I stared at the page so long, the words started to blur. Thank you for seeing me. 4 words that weighed more than any plaque on my wall. I reached for the rotary file in the hallway closet, the one with old student names and addresses, most long out of date. Grant. Timothy. 3rd tab from the back. No phone number, just Oakland County foster system. I closed the box. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking of Marcus and his folded letter, of Timmy's birds, of every child who never said goodbye without actually saying it. So the next morning, I called Angela. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Miss D. You okay? Angela Mendes, now Angelist. James was one of my students in 91. She used to bring tamales to school after Thanksgiving. Told everyone I was the first adult to pronounce her name right. Now she was a social worker. A tough one. I would run into her 2 years ago at the grocery store. She would invited me for coffee, and we would stayed in touch. I explained about the letter. Angela did not laugh. Didn't he say it was foolish or hopeless? She said, send me a photo of it. I will see what I can find. By noon, she called back. I found him. She said. I blinked. You what? He is alive, living just outside Flint, working night shifts at a bottling plant. No spouse, no kids on record. I swallowed hard. Can I see him? Angela paused. Miss D. I think you should. 2 days later, I stood outside a grey duplex that sagged a little in the middle, like a tired spine. Angela waited beside me. She held a folder of paperwork, but did not say a word. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again. After a minute, the door opened a crack. A man stood behind it, early 40s. Shaggy beard. Eyes wary. He looked like someone who had lived too many winters alone. Yes. His voice was low. Tired? I said. You probably do not remember me, but I remember. He cut in. I froze. You wore a green sweater, and you let me sit near the window so I could draw birds. He opened the door wider. Miss D. He said it like it was a memory he was not sure still existed. We sat in his living room. It smelled like reheated coffee and old paperbacks. There were sketches on the table, birds, just like before, but now with dates and species names. I got into wildlife drawing, he said. Never made a living off it, but it helps. I handed him the letter. He held it with both hands like it might tear if he breathed too hard. I thought I lost this. He whispered. You never sent it, I said. He smiled. I was afraid. Afraid you would forget me. I never did. We sat a while in silence. And then he asked, almost a whisper, do you think you could teach me again? Reading? Real stuff, not just signs and labels. I nodded. I did not need to think twice. I would be honored. As I rose to leave, he handed me a sketch. It was a single bird, a sparrow perched on the edge of a blackboard. In tiny cursive at the bottom. It read, to the only teacher who ever saw me fly. Part 3. The Color of Courage. Detroit, Michigan 2023 in memory. 1975. The drawing of the sparrow stayed on my kitchen table for 2 days. I did not put it in a frame. Didn't he tuck it away? I just let it sit. Every time I walked by, I stopped and stared. There was something in the bird's eye, something raw and watchful, like it was guarding something. That is when I remembered Elijah. It is strange how one face can unlock another, like a roll call in your bones. Elijah Walker. 4th grade, 1975. He came in during desegregation, when busing plans were exploding across Detroit. White parents were marching. Black families were protesting. The schools became battlegrounds for what they called policy. But to Elijah, it was just Tuesday, a new school, a new desk, a new world that did not want him. I remember the day he arrived. He wore his Sunday church shirt and jeans that were 2 sizes too small, carried no backpack, just a folded note that said, Elijah's quiet, please be patient. We just want him safe. But safe was not something I could promise in those days, especially not in room 12. The other kids stared at him like he was carrying a disease. One boy muttered a word I won't repeat. A girl slid her chair away from him like his presence was a threat. And Elijah just sat there, back straight, eyes down. At recess, no one played with him. He stood alone by the chain-link fence, tracing patterns in the dirt with his foot. So I went to him. You draw birds? I asked. He looked up, surprised. I smiled. Seems like a good day for flying away. His mouth curled into something almost like a grin. He did not talk much, but when he did, his words were heavy with thought. He told me once, they do not want me here, but I am gonna stay till they know I ain't scared. The strength in that tiny voice still makes my spine straighten. A week later, he got jumped in the hallway. 3 6th graders cornered him by the boys' bathroom, called him every slur in the book, shoved him to the ground. No teacher saw, no report was filed, but I found him behind the gym, holding his bleeding lip with his sleeve. I wanted to call his parents. He said no. They will just move me again. So I did the only thing I could, marched into the principal's office mirror. Harlan, a man who believed eye contact optional and equality was complicated, and I said, "If you do not discipline those boys, I will go to the papers. I will go to the superintendent. I will go to God himself if I have to." He looked at me like I would grown horns. But the next day, the boys were suspended. Elijah got moved to the front row in my class, next to the window, and for the first time, I saw him smile without hesitation. A month later, he brought me a drawing. A hawk, mid-flight, with sharp lines and outstretched wings. He wrote underneath, "To the teacher who did not let them clip mine." I kept that drawing. Still have it somewhere. In 2023, I did not expect to hear from Elijah ever again. But the day after I visited Timmy, I got an email. The subject line just said, "Room 12. It read, "Dear Miss, you probably do not remember me, but I have remembered you every day since 1975. You stood up for me when others would not. You put your job on the line for a scrawny kid who drew hawks. That kind of courage does not fade. I am retired Army now. Did 22 years. Got a Bronze Star in Iraq. 2 kids. One's in college. The other's studying pre-med. I saw your video online. Still standing tall. Still you. If you are willing, I would love to see you again. We are having a veterans gathering next week at the North End Library. Some of the kids I mentored will be there. You should too. Yours always, Elijah Walker." I stared at the screen for a long time. Somewhere deep inside, the girl who once dared to threaten a principal felt her heart swell. I showed up at the library that Thursday. There were flags on the walls and metal chairs in neat rows. People with service hats and medals on their jackets. Worn hands shaking hands. Then I saw him. Still tall. Still calm. Same eyes. Same quiet strength. He hugged me like someone hugging the first home they ever knew. "You are taller than I remember," I said. He laughed. "You are shorter?" We sat in the back. He told me about the war, about watching friends die in places with no names, about using art to keep sane. He showed me a photo of a mural he painted at a VA hospital in Georgia. It was a hawk, flying high over a desert ridge. He said, "That bird's always been you." Toward the end of the event, they asked if anyone wanted to speak. Elijah nudged me. I stood up. My knees shook a little, but my voice held. "I taught for 41 years, I said. "But some of my students taught me more than I ever taught them." I looked at Elijah. One of them showed me what courage looks like when the world tells you to shrink. Another just asked me to teach him how to read again. And one wrote me a letter he never sent. People listened. Some wiped their eyes. Some clapped. It was not viral. It was not trending. But it was real. And for the first time since that video, I felt like a teacher again. As I walked back to my car, Elijah handed me a folder. Inside was a copy of the mural. Taped to it was a note. "There is a girl named Lauren. She reminds me of me. Think you have one more lesson in you." Part 4. Lauren Doesn't He Look Up? Detroit, Michigan, 2023. Her name was Lauren, 12 years old. 6th grade. Brown ponytail, chipped nail polish, and a phone glued to her palm like it was a lifeline. She barely spoke during our first meeting. Just kind of nodded with one earbud still in. Elijah had brought her to meet me after the library event. She has got the same eyes I had back then. he would said. Except now they never look up. We met at a church rec room. He volunteered at a clean but faded space, with folding chairs, stained carpet, and a vending machine that only took exact change. Lauren sat curled up in a hoodie 2 sizes too big, her backpack untouched at her feet. She had not made eye contact since I walked in. I offered her a soft smile. Lauren. Daniels. She did not reply. Elijah looked at her. Why do not you show her the notebook? She shifted, rolled her eyes, pulled a crumpled composition book from her bag, and shoved it across the table. I opened it. The first page had tiny drawings, some good, some rushed. Girls with big eyes and sad mouths. Houses with cracked windows. And in the margins, words. Half poems. Half confessions. She talks to me like I am broken, but I am not. I am just tired. If I disappear, would anyone notice by lunch? I took a slow breath. These are honest, I said. Lauren shrugged. Elijah leaned over. She does not talk much in school. They have labeled her at risk. Mother's working 2 jobs. Father's gone. She has been suspended twice this year for skipping. Do you like school? I asked gently. Lauren did not look up. What is the point? Those 3 words hit harder than she meant them to. Because I would heard them before. From kids in the 70s dodging gangs. From girls in the 90s hiding bruises. From boys who could not read out loud without shaking. I closed the notebook and slid it back. Would you let me read these with you? Sometime, I asked. Not to grade them. Not to fix them. Just to see what you see. Lauren blinked slowly. She did not say yes. But she did not say no. Over the next few weeks, we met every Wednesday at the church. At first, she barely spoke. Just sat across from me with that notebook on the table, arms crossed tight over her chest. But I kept showing up. Brought peppermint candies one day. Let her pick the music on another. One afternoon, I said, I used to teach kids how to write their names in cursive. She blinked. What is cursive? I paused. You have never written your name in cursive. She shook her head. They do not teach that anymore. I dug into my purse, pulled out an old mechanical pencil, and turned her notebook sideways. I wrote, slow and curved, Lauren. She tilted her head. It looks fancy. She said, it looks like you matter. I replied. She stared at the page for a long moment, then slowly picked up her pen and copied it underneath. Maureen. The letters were shaky, but they were hers. One evening, Elijah came in late and caught us mid-lesson. Lauren had just written, I do not know if I am supposed to feel this sad, and I would replied, You are also supposed to feel seen. Elijah leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Smiling, You are still doing it, he said after she left. Still finding kids who do not know they are worth something. I looked at, I do not find them, they find me. He sat down across from me. You ever think about going back? Just once more. I laughed. I am 76. I would need a nap halfway through first period. But what if it was not a school? What if it was here? Just you. Some notebooks, and a few kids who do not look up. I sat in silence, because he was not wrong. The next week, I bought a small whiteboard and carried it into the rec room. Wrote in cursive, "Words matter." Lauren was the first to walk in. Then Elijah brought two more, an 8th grade boy named Jason who struggled to read Minas, and a girl named Brea who had not been to school in 3 weeks. I did not start with grammar. I did not start with lessons. I asked them one question. What is something no one has ever listened to from you? They wrote. Slowly. Hesitantly. Then they read, and I listened. That night, I opened the shoebox under my bed again, the one full of crayon letters and birthday cards from students long grown. Near the bottom was a folded piece of lined paper from 1991. Dear Miss, you told me I could be the first in my family to go to college. So I became a nurse. I saved a life last week. I think you deserve to know that. Love. Angela. The same Angela who now helped me track down Timmy. The same Angela who invited me to coffee when I thought no one remembered. We build things as teachers. We do not always see what stays standing. But sometimes the bricks call us back. The next Wednesday, Lauren handed me a fresh page from her notebook. At the top, in neat cursive, it said, Dear Miss, I did not think anyone could make me feel like I am not alone. And beneath it, do you think I could be a writer? Part 5, the one I lost. Detroit, Michigan 2023 memory, 1998. The question lingered in my chest for days. Do you think I could be a writer? Lauren had asked it so softly, like she did not dare believe in it herself. I would said yes. Of course. Not because I was trying to be nice, because I meant it. She had that H in her words. The kind you can teach. The kind you earn. Still, her voice stirred something older in me. A wound I had kept sealed shut for decades. The name surfaced in my mind before I could stop it. Anthony Barrow. If I had a list, and we all do, whether we admit it or not, of students I carry with guilt instead of pride, Anthony was always at the top. 1998 was a hard year. The district was slashing budgets again. They took away art, music, and half the counselors. I had 32 kids packed into room 12, many of them angry, tired, or already watching younger siblings because their parents worked double shifts. Anthony was new that fall, moved in from Chicago. Skinny, sharp-eyed, kept his hood up even in class, had a mouth on him, called me Miss Dinosaur once, loud enough to earn laughs and a trip to the hallway. But I was not mad. He reminded me of Marcus before Marcus had found his feet. Anthony read under his desk when no one was watching, mostly sci-fi novels with frayed covers. He never turned in homework, but he wrote the most vivid stories when I let them choose their own topics. Aliens, time travel, cities with no parents and rules made by kids. He was brilliant, but he was also furious. His father had been killed in a shooting the year before. His mother was barely holding on. One afternoon, he stayed late and asked if I knew what it felt like to want to punch something every minute of the day. I told him yes. I told him about losing my husband at 26. How I once threw a coffee mug at the wall so hard the handle embedded into the drywall. He smiled. That was the first time he called me Miss D. But a month later, something happened. The principal pulled me out of class one morning. There was an incident, he said. Anthony had gotten into a fight, bloody, vicious, after school. A knife was involved. The other boy was hospitalized. They expelled him that day. No hearing. No parent conference. Just a call to his mom and a stack of paperwork. I argued. I begged. I said, "This is the kind of kid who needs us the most." The principal said, "We are not equipped for him." And just like that, he was gone. I wrote to him twice. The letters came back unopened. And over the years, I convinced myself he would disappear into the system. Maybe prison. Maybe worse. So when Lauren asked me if she could be a writer, Anthony's voice came rushing back, his sarcasm. His stories. His rage. I found myself digging through the shoebox again. Beneath drawings and thank you cards was a folded piece of paper I had not opened in years. It was a page torn from one of his stories, written in pencil with smeared eraser marks. In the city of iron skies, there lived a boy with knives in his heart and wings he had not grown yet. He did not believe in angels, but he still looked up every night just in case. I sat there holding it like a confession, and I knew I had to try. I called Angela. "Anthony Barrow," I said. There was a pause on the line. "From 98. Yes, I will look." It took her 3 days. Then she called. "I found him," she said quietly. "He is at a halfway house in Highland Park. Just got out 2 years ago. Drug charges. Been in and out since he was 20. But he is clean now. Works construction. Keeps to himself." I closed my eyes. "Will he see me?" "I do not know, but I will ask." He said yes. The halfway house was an old red brick building that smelled like bleach and boiled rice. The front desk guy led me to a quiet room with folding chairs and a vending machine that buzzed like a dying bee. Anthony walked in a minute. Later, older, bigger, beard starting to grey. But the eyes were the same, sharp, restless, scanning for exits. He sat down across from me and folded his arms. "You came. I was not sure you would want me to." He snorted. Curiosity wins. I reached into my bag and pulled out the paper. His story, the city of iron skies. His expression did not change, but I saw his hands tighten. "You kept that?" he asked. "All these years?" He leaned back. "They said you tried to fight for me. After everything." "I did. They did not care." I nodded. "I know." We sat in silence. "I hated you for a while," he said finally. "Thought you gave up on me." I looked him in the eye. "I never did." His shoulders slumped. "Just a little." He whispered, "I thought I could be something once. Maybe a writer." Then life started closing doors. I said, "It is not too late." He laughed one short, bitter sound. "I'm 42. What would I even write about now? About a boy with knives in his heart and wings he had not grown yet." I said, "Still sounds like a good story to me." He did not say much when I left, just a quiet nod. But the next week, I got a message. A picture, a notebook page. His handwriting rough but familiar. The boy is older now. He does not believe in angels, but he knows someone watched the skies for him when he could not. Underneath, one line. Missed. I started writing again. The following Wednesday, Lauren came to class beaming. She held up a short story she would written. At the top of the page, in looping cursive, was the title, "City of Iron Skies," And on the last page, dedicated to a teacher who never stopped believing we had wings. Part 6. You care too much. Detroit, Michigan 2023 in memory, 2002. The invitation came in a plain envelope. Return address, Detroit Public Schools Community Outreach. Inside was a flyer creased and smudged, like someone had folded it quickly and changed their mind a dozen times. Educators Roundtable. Reflections on teaching, then and now. Panelists include current and retired teachers, administrators, and community advocates. Light refreshments provided. In the corner, handwritten in blue ink. We would love to have you speak. Daniels. You are kind of a legend. Lewis. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the recipe line. I had not been in a room full of educators in years, not since my final retirement luncheon, where the cake said "Thank you, Ms. Donald's" in green frosting. My daughter had laughed. I had not. Still, I felt something tug at me. Maybe it was Lauren's story still sitting on my bookshelf. Maybe it was Timmy's letter in my dresser drawer. Or maybe it was the memory of a voice I had not heard in decades. You care too much. Daniels. I heard it so clearly. I almost turned my head. The roundtable was held at an old community college downtown. Same brick walls, same flickering fluorescents, same coffee in styrofoam that could strip paint. The panel sat in a semicircle, 4 folding chairs, a table with mismatched name placards, and a microphone that squeaked every time someone breathed too hard. When I arrived, a young woman in a bright pantsuit greeted me with too much energy and handed me a Sharpie. Write your name for the placard. Please, you are our star guest. I wrote simply, Daniels. They seated me between a woman named Jasmine, a first-year high school teacher who still thought lesson plans were sacred, and a man named Gary. I had not seen Gary Wells since 2002. He would be an assistant principal at McKinley for a handful of years before leaving for district office. Stiff, stern, the kind of man who called kids units in meetings. He once wrote me up for excessive classroom emotion. We did not speak as we sat, didn't even nod, but I could feel the years between us thick as smoke in a stairwell. The moderator was a man with kind eyes and a speech he would clearly memorized. He asked us about changes in education, the role of technology, what still mattered. Jasmine talked about screen time and burnout. Gary droned about data-driven metrics and measurable learning. Outcomes. When my turn came, the moderator leaned forward. Daniels, you taught for over 4 decades. What stayed the same? I paused, then said, the eyes. That got a few puzzled looks. The eyes of a child who is being told they do not matter. The eyes of a kid who is hungry but too proud to say it. The eyes of a girl who does not want to go home at the end of the day. I folded my hands. I saw them in 1973. I saw them in 2015. I still see them now. Jasmine blinked. Gary shifted in his chair. I added, we like to talk about outcomes, charts, budgets, but we forget we are not shaping scores. We are holding lives. Someone clapped in the back. I did not look to see who. Gary cleared his throat. With respect, he said, I believe that kind of idealism is what burns teachers out. You can save every kid. You can take them home with you. There has to be a line. He turned slightly toward me. You always struggled with that line. And there it was. You care too much. He did not say it the same way he had in 2002. but it felt just as sharp. That year, my lowest as a teacher, I had 3 students removed for abuse within 1 semester. I would spend weekends calling social workers, picking up donated coats, driving one boy to a dental clinic because no one else would. The principal had called me in. "You care too much, Daniels," he would said. "You are not their mother." I would gone home that night and cried into the couch until my daughter made me tea. And the next morning, I would still shown up, still stood by the door with a smile and a warm good morning for kids who had not heard one all week. In this room of educators and bottled water and buzzwords, I took a breath and looked Gary in the eye. "You are right," I said. His eyebrows twitched. "You can save every child." I tried. God knows I tried. The room was silent, but I did not show up every day to save. I showed up to see the ones no one else did. Because sometimes, being seen is what saves them. I looked out over the room. I kept a shoebox under my bed for 40 years, full of letters, drawings, notes. Some joyful, some heart-wrenching. I did not keep them because I thought I was a hero. I kept them because they reminded me why I stayed. I turned back to Gary. I never forgot the kids I lost, but I have learned to carry them next to the ones I did not. He did not respond, but the moderator did. "Daniels, would you be willing to read one of those letters at our next gathering?" I nodded. "Yes, I will bring one that broke my heart, and one that put it back together." As the panel ended and people began to file out, Jasmine leaned over and whispered, "I hope I am still like you in 40 years. I touched her hand. "Be better. Be braver." Gary did not look at me when he left, but I saw him pause at the door, just for a moment. That night, back in my quiet kitchen, I opened the shoebox again, pulled out a Valentine from 1984, drawn in red marker by a girl named Danielle who used to cry every Monday. It read, "You smell like books, and your hugs make me feel like a big person." And underneath, in lopsided hearts, "I want to be a teacher when I grow up, like you." As I placed the card back, my phone buzzed. A text from Angela. "You might want to see this." A link. A video. Lauren standing in front of her school, reading her first poem aloud. A crowd gathered, her voice steady. The title, "Wings I Didn't Know I Had." Part 7. The Words We Carry. Detroit, Michigan 2023. In memory, 1983. The video played on my phone in silence. Lauren, standing in front of her middle school, clutching a crumpled paper. Her voice, calm and steady, rose over the hum of passing traffic. Her classmates watch from the sidewalk. Heads tilted, some even clapping. The title of the poem, "Wings I Didn't Know I Had." I let the words wash over me like old church hymns, warm, etching. Familiar? Angela had sent the link with a message. "You gave her the first lift. She is flying now." And I cried, not because I was proud, because I remembered what it costs to lift someone up when the weight of the world keeps pressing them down. 3 days later, the text invitation arrived. The email was simple. "We saw the video of Lauren. We heard about you. We would be honored if you would tell your story on stage." 15 minutes. Just you and a microphone. For a while, I stared at the blinking cursor in the reply box. Then I thought about Timmy S. Sparrow, about Elijah's hawk, About Anthony S. Boy with knives in his heart. And Lauren, learning to fly with every syllable. I typed. Yes, but I am bringing my chalkboard. The event was held in Ann Arbor, a rented auditorium with lights so bright I felt like a moth trying to land on the sun. Backstage. A girl in a headset offered me bottled water and a cordless mic. "You are our final speaker," she said. "Save the biggest punch for last." I smiled politely, but my hands were cold. I had not been in front of a crowd like this since the Peter yelled at me in 2007 for cancelling a pizza party to fund winter gloves. Then the music faded. The spotlight clicked on, and it was time. I walked onto the stage holding nothing but a small, travel-sized chalkboard, the kind they do not sell in stores anymore, the kind you carry because your memory demands it. I set it on the easel, picked up a piece of chalk, and wrote, "Remember me?" Then I turned to the audience and began. I taught for 41 years in room 12 of McKinley Elementary. Red brick. Squeaky floors. The smell of pencil shavings and wet boots. Back when chalk was power and eye contact meant respect. I taught hundreds of children. Maybe more. But today, I want to talk about the ones I remember most. I paused. Not the straighter kids with perfect penmanship. The ones we all remember. I am talking about the ones who were forgotten before they ever walked into my room. I told them about Marcus, how he drew trucks in the margins and once asked me if he was going to be nothing. I told them about Timmy, who moved from home to home and wrote me a letter I did not open for 30 years. I told them about Elijah, how he stood by the fence and learned to fight with pencils instead of fists. And Anthony, who almost disappeared, but now writes again because someone kept a single page of his story. The room was silent. I leaned on the podium and looked out at rows of strangers. Do you know what it is like to walk into a classroom every morning and wonder who won Team Ake it through the year? To teach with one eye on the board and one on the bruises. To write comments on failing report cards and wonder if anyone will ever read them. I picked up the chalk again, wrote 3 words on the board. You were seen. My job was not just to teach multiplication tables or grammar rules. It was to remind children, especially the broken ones, that someone noticed them. That someone knew their name. That they were not invisible. I turned slowly back to the crowd. And now, I ask you, who are you remembering right now? A teacher who changed you. A student you could not save. A child you did not reach in time. Faces shifted in the dim light. Some wiped tears. Some just stared. I closed with this. In my shoebox at home are notes, drawings, and scraps of paper. One says, "Thank you for not giving up on me." That line is more valuable than any paycheck, pension, or applause. I looked down at the chalkboard, touched the word "seen," because the truth is, sometimes we do not need to be remembered by everyone. We just need to be remembered by one. The applause came slowly at first, then louder, then a standing ovation I did not know how to receive. I bowed my head, not out of pride but out of weight, because I was carrying all of them with me. Backstage, a young man approached me. He was maybe in his late 20s, hair still wet from nerves. He said, "You probably do not remember me." I smiled. "I have heard that before." He held out a laminated library card. "You signed me up for this in 3rd grade. Said reading was a passport." He grinned. I am an English teacher now. I did not cry until he left. That night, back in my hotel room, I sat cross-legged on the bed, chalk dust still on my sweater. I pulled out a letter I had not read in years. A boy named Kenny. Short, fidgety, always chewing his sleeves. He had been pulled from school after his mom joined a religious commune in Indiana. No contact since. The letter was a single sentence. Miss D, you were the first person who did not think I was weird. As I slid the letter back into the envelope, my phone buzzed. It was from Lauren. A photo. Her sitting at a desk. In front of her, a small group of second graders. Wide-eyed. Caption. They let me read to them today. I told them about the sparrow. Part 8. The door was still locked. Detroit, Michigan 2023 in memory. 1973-2015. The old key was still on my ring. Rusty. Quiet. A little bent at the tip from decades of use. Room 12 had never needed much, just a little pressure. A soft. And patience. I had not used that key in nearly 8 years. But that morning, I stood in front of the chain link fence wrapped around McKinley Elementary, wondering if maybe, just maybe, the lock still remembered me. The school had closed in 2016. Budget cuts. Enrollment drops. Consolidation plans. All the usual language they use when they kill something slowly. I would heard rumors it would be demolished next spring. Something about affordable housing and modern community needs. But I was not ready to let go. I had called Angela the night before. I want to go back, I said. She did not ask why. I will meet you there. 9 So we did. 2 grown women, both with old lives stitched into their bones, standing at the edge of a chain-link gate that had been zip-tied shut. Angela pulled out wire cutters from her purse like she would been waiting for this. You bring those everywhere? I joked. She winked. Only when history needs saving. We walked past cracked blacktop, faded hopscotch outlines, weeds growing through the asphalt. The playground was gone. No swing sets. No slide. Just a flat emptiness where voices used to echo. The front doors had been boarded up, but the side maintenance entrance still had its handle, and my key still fit. The metal groaned. And then, we were inside. McKinley smelled like dust and forgotten holidays. Posters still clung to walls. Reading is fun. Half peeled, curling at the corners. A paper turkey in a hallway window. A child's mitten on the floor. Stiff with time, I walked slowly, like I was stepping into memory. Each tile creaked the same. Even the scuff marks seemed familiar, like the ghosts of sneakers running late. Angela trailed behind me, silent. Then we reached room 12. My hand hovered over the knob. It stuck at first. Then click. The door opened into silence. Desks were still there, stacked in the back like forgotten dominoes. My bookshelf leaned at an angle, its top shelf sagging. The blackboard was covered with a tarp, weighed down by dust. I stood in the center of the room, closed my eyes. I could hear them. Laughter, chalk against slate, the hum of the old radiator in December, the soft scratching of pencils, the rustle of a child trying not to cry. 41 years in this room. First spelling tests. First broken hearts. First poems. First times a child was told, I believe in you. Angela found an old box beneath the teacher's desk. Inside, laminated name tags, a bent ruler, a folder labeled Emergency Lesson Plans 2004, and a shoebox. Not mine, but one left behind. She handed it to me. No name on it, she said. I opened it slowly. Inside were folded notes. Tiny ones. Torn notebook paper. Drawings. Scribbled messages. Dear Miss, I am sorry I lied about my homework. I hope you do not forget me. My mom is sad again, but I will be okay. You are the reason I want to be kind. I knelt to the floor, held the box in my lap, and wept. Angela sat beside me. Someone saved these, she said. I do not remember putting them there. I whispered. She touched my hand. You did not have to. You carried them already. When we left room 12, I brought nothing with me. No trophies. No textbooks. Just that box. But before I locked the door, I did one last thing. I pulled the tarp from the blackboard, wrote with a piece of chalk I found on the window sill. This room mattered. And underneath, Daniels, 1973-2015. That night, back in my own home, I sat with the shoebox in my lap. I did not open it again, just let it rest on the kitchen table, the way you would rest a child's head in your hands. I called my daughter, told her I loved her, told her I missed hearing her say goodnight like she used to when she was small, told her I had spent my life holding space for other people as children, and maybe I had forgotten how to hold my own. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I think I became a good mother because of you. And that was enough. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a photo, room 12. The chalkboard still visible. My handwriting untouched. On the back, I broken after you. I needed to see it for myself. Thank you for giving me a place I could belong. Part 9. A New Kind of Classroom. Detroit, Michigan 2023. Memory. Present day. The letter stayed on the kitchen table for hours. I must have read the signature a dozen times, tracing the single letter M with the edge of my thumb. I did not know which of them it was. Marcus. Maybe he always needed a dramatic exit. Or maybe one I would forgotten. God help me. I have forgotten more names than I would ever admit. But the message was clear. Someone went back. Someone found that chalkboard and saw those words, this room mattered, and believed them. It stirred something in me. That photo. A kind of H I had not felt since my first week as a teacher, when I realized the job was not about information, it was about presence. About showing up even when you are tired. About holding silence for the kid who has none at home. About witnessing a moment in a child's life that even they will forget, but not you. 3 days later, I got a call from Jasmine. She was the young teacher from the education panel, the one with the spark in her eyes and the shadow of burnout already gathering behind them. Daniels, she said, breathless. I know this is out of nowhere, but would you come speak to my teacher prep class at Wayne State? I smiled into the receiver. You want me to lecture about long division? She laughed. Madam, I want you to talk about what school used to be, what it should be. I paused, then asked, do they still use chalkboards? She chuckled. We use dry erase. or PowerPoint. Lord help us all, I said. The class met in a beige room with fluorescent lights and tables shaped like puzzle pieces. The kind of space that looked designed by someone who had never tried to keep 30 third graders from licking glue sticks. I stood in front of 15 young faces, some wide-eyed, some already wary. They had clipboards, water bottles with motivational stickers, laptops glowing with tabs full of lesson plan templates. I set my chalkboard on a table, the same one from my TEDx talk. I want to teach you how to write objectives today, I said. But I will tell you why you will want to quit, and why you should not. Heads turned. I told them about Lauren, how she scribbled poetry in a notebook full of hurt, how she learned to write her name in cursive and started believing in her voice. I told them about Timmy, who vanished in 1987 but found his way back through a letter he never mailed. Told them about Marcus, Elijah, Anthony, each one bruised by the world, not broken. And then I told them about failure. My worst moments were not the ones where I lost my temper or misspelled something on the board, I said. They were the ones where I let the system tell me I could not do more. Silence. You will be told not to get too attached. I continued. You will hear phrases like boundaries and burnout prevention. And yes, those matter, but do not ever let someone convince you that caring deeply is a flaw. After class, one of the students, her name was Melanie, walked up to me. She looked maybe 22, hair in a messy bun, circles under her eyes. I heard. She said, "Good." I replied. She blinked. I smiled. It means your heart's still in the room. Jasmine followed me to the parking lot, held out a folder. Inside was a proposal. Legacy Mentorship Program, retired teachers supporting new educators. We are piloting it next semester. She said, and I want you to lead it. I opened my mouth to protest, but she cut me off. It is virtual. 2 hours a week. We match you with 1 or 2 young teachers. You meet, talk, support. I looked down at the folder again. Inside were names, notes, requests from teachers saying things like, need help connecting with struggling readers. Feeling alone. Wish I had someone to talk to who has been through it. My chest tightened. Nodded. I will do it. The first session was on a Wednesday. 2 teachers, one in Chicago, one in rural Pennsylvania. Both overwhelmed. Both brilliant. One had a class where 4 languages were spoken and no aid. The other had a student who came to school hungry and angry every day. We did not talk about test scores. We talked about eyes, about silence, about desks that become lifeboats. At the end of the call, one of them said, I did not know I needed this. I replied, neither did. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the photo from room 12 beside me, and I wrote, not a lesson plan, not a speech, a letter to all of them. Dear ones, I taught for 41 years. I buried too many names. And still, I remember the sound of chalk, the way a child's eyes shine when they feel safe. I remember that teaching is not just instruction, it is interruption. A moment that breaks the cycle of being unseen. If you are reading this, know that you were not invisible to me. I saw you. I believed in you. I still do. And if you are teaching now, hold on. Hold tight. not just to standards, but to softness, to noticing, to listening. Because somewhere, a child is writing a story you will never read unless you ask. Somewhere, a little girl is waiting for someone to call her a writer. And maybe, just maybe, a chalkboard still stands in a quiet room. Waiting. Love always. Daniels. The next morning, I opened my front door to grab the newspaper. On the porch sat a white box. Inside, a fresh piece of chalk, a handwritten card, for your next lesson. Part 10, the last lesson. Detroit, Michigan 2024. It started with one flyer, typed in large font, taped to the bulletin board at the grocery store, the post office, the laundromat, writing our stories, a free community class, for ages 9 to 99. No grades, no tests. Just stories, taught by Miss Daniels, room 12 retired, every Thursday, 4-6, Luke S. Fellowship Hall. I did not expect much. A few curious kids. Maybe a retired neighbor with time to kill. I thought I would sit in a quiet room with a dry erase board and a half-empty coffee pot. But on the first Thursday of February, the fellowship hall was full. Lauren was there, her hair tied back neatly, her spiral notebook hugged tight to her chest. Angela brought her nephew Shy, wide-eyed, biting his sleeve. Even Anthony came, carrying a worn leather journal and a quiet smile. There was a grandmother named Edna who said she had not written since 1962. A teenager named Malik who wrote rap lyrics in the margins of his math homework. A father who wanted to write a letter to his daughter he had not seen in years. They sat in plastic folding chairs in a circle, surrounded by folding tables and a water cooler with stale Dixie cups. But to me, it looked like the most beautiful classroom I would ever seen. I stood up front, chalkboard behind me, not the one from McKinley, but a new one donated by Jasmine School. On it, I wrote in clean cursive, "Every life is a story. Let us tell yours." We met every Thursday. Sometimes 10 showed up. Sometimes 20. We sat in circles. We read. We listened. Edna wrote about growing up in Mississippi and falling in love during a Motown concert in 1965. Malik wrote a poem about his uncle's funeral and how silence feels different when it is earned. Angela's nephew wrote his first full sentence without fear. Lauren. She wrote a children's story about a bird who could not sing but danced instead. She read it aloud, voice trembling, until the room applauded. And me. I listened. I guided. I passed out pencils, and I watched them discover what I always knew, that the act of writing is the act of remembering you exist. One evening, near the end of class, a boy named Toby, 10 years old, buck teeth, always had ink on his fingers, raised his hand. "Daniels," he said, "how do you know if you are a good teacher?" The room went quiet. I thought about the awards, the speeches, the video that went viral. Then I looked around that little room at children with open notebooks, elders with tear-streaked cheeks, teens trying to say what had not been said. And I said, if someone remembers what you taught them long after you are gone, that is how you know. Toby nodded and wrote it down. In March, we held our first reading night. No stage. No microphones. Just a circle of chairs, a plate of store-bought cookies, and a group of people willing to share their hearts. Anthony read a new short story about a man with a hammer and a heart full of cracks, trying to build something that would not fall again. Edna read a love letter to her late husband, paused halfway through to catch her breath, and whispered, "I have not said his name out loud in 10 years. Lauren read a poem. Her voice did not tremble this time. She stood tall, and when she finished, she did not look at the floor. She looked at me. I had one more story to share. I pulled out a sheet of paper, folded in half, yellowed with time. "Timmy wrote this in 1987. I said. He never meant for me to read it, but I did. I read aloud the words of a boy who did not believe he mattered. And then I said, he is writing again now. He just sent me a bird sketch in the mail last week." Gasps, smiles, a few tears. Because sometimes a child you taught in the Reagan years can still send you hope by postal mail in 2024. On the final day of the class, I came early. Lauren was already there, setting up chairs. She had started doing that weeks ago without asking. Just quietly, as if she knew I would show up tired. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "I am just thinking." "About what?" "About how full a room can feel when the right people show up." She smiled. "I brought you something." She handed me a wrapped gift tissue paper, soft, warm in my hands. Inside was a brand new box of chalk. Pastel colors, neatly arranged, and a note for the teacher who made me believe words are wings. Lauren. That night, after everyone had gone, I stood in front of the chalkboard one last time. I thought about all the things I could write. "Thank you. You mattered." This was enough. But instead, I picked up the white chalk, and I wrote, slowly, across the blackboard. "The end. For now." Then, in smaller letters beneath it, "Keep writing. Keep living. Keep loving out loud." I stepped back, took one last look, and smiled. Epilogue. I do not know how many more Thursdays I have. The bones creak louder now. The coffee tastes more nostalgic than energizing. But I do know this. Room 12 never really closed. It moved. It traveled into hearts and notebooks, into grocery store flyers and Zoom calls and community halls. It lives in Timmy's birds, in Marcus' bedtime stories, in Elijah's mural, in Anthony's journal, and in Lauren's voice. And maybe, just maybe, it lives in you. So if you are reading this, pick up a pencil and begin. The end of the story, but not the lesson.